So this next category is invert linear functions. So we have to find the inverse function in slope intercept form. So we're going to find the inverse. It's just like what we were doing earlier, except earlier we were doing it through a graph and a t-table. This time we are doing it algebraically, so from the equation. So there's a few steps that you want to do. The first step is to replace the f of x with y, because you know f of x is the same thing as y. So instead of f of x equals, we have y equals. So that's our first step. Just replace f of x with y. Okay. Nothing fancy yet. It's just replace f of x with y. Okay, and then remember earlier I kept saying the key to getting the inverse is switch x and y. Oops, x and y. That is still applicable here. So from this equation, let me rewrite it. From the y is equal to 1/4 x plus 3, I'm literally going to switch the x and y. Now it becomes x is equal to 1/4 y plus 3. Literally just switched x and y. This is the key to doing the inverse always, whether you're doing it in the graph, in a t-table, or in the equation. The key is to switch x and y. So before I move on, are there any questions? Okay, so from here, all we need to do is rewrite this into slope intercept form. So that means we want y equals mx plus b, right? That's what it says, mx plus b. So get y by itself. To get y by itself, I'm going to subtract 3. I get x minus 3 is equal to 1/4 y. And 1/4 y, it's a fraction. So to get rid of the fraction, you just multiply by the bottom part, because fractions are division problems. This is literally 1 divided by 4. So to get rid of dividing by 4, you just multiply by 4. So everything gets multiplied by 4. So then we get 4x minus 3 equals 1y. 1y is just y, so this can just be rewritten as y. However, I wrote the 1 out so that you can emphasize that the top of the fraction is the number in front of y. Okay, I'm going to rewrite this up top because I have to get more space. So we have 4 parentheses x minus 3 is equal to 1 y. I just rewrote it. Okay, so now let's distribute the 4 into the x and the minus 3. So 4 times x is 4x. 4 times negative 3 is minus 12. And then 1y is just y. And finally, this is in the mx plus b form that we wanted. This is 4x minus 12. That's your mx plus b. And so all we have to do is type this in over here. So it's 4x minus 12. I guess technically the last step would be to replace the y with the f inverse of x. So you see these symbols? Instead of f of x, which is the original, you have this little -1 here. And this little -1 that looks like it's an exponent is not an exponent. When you put f and then you put the -1 to the top right corner, that's f inverse. That's how you write inverse. So you would say this as f inverse of x. This is f of x. This one is f inverse of x. That's what the -1 is. It's the inverse. So then we put it into mx plus b form. So 4x minus 12 goes in our answer box because that's what we got over here. All right, any questions? Let's submit. Let's do another 2 examples because I know that algebraically stuff gets a little bit harder. So here are all drawings. Okay, so our first step in doing this, remember, is to replace f of x with y. So f of x becomes y, and then that way we can, switch our x and y out because we need a y in there to switch your x and y. Okay, so I got our f of x changed into a y. Then our next step is to switch x and y. I'm going to write that out. Remember, the key to inverses is always just switching x and y. So let me rewrite this up here. y is equal to negative x minus 3. Now we switch the x and y, it becomes x is equal to negative y minus 3. Literally just switching the x and the y. After you switch the x and the y, we want it to get it in slope intercept form, so we want y by itself. So let's get our y by itself. I'm going to add 3. We get x plus 3 equals negative y. And then we don't want negative y, we want regular y. So I'm going to multiply everything by negative 1. And then when everything is multiplied by negative 1, let me just write it out like this. Negative x plus 3 equals positive y. So then we need to distribute that negative 1 into everything. It becomes negative x minus 3 equals y. And so now that we have our y by itself, this is your final answer, then negative x minus 3. So let me type that in. Negative x minus 3. Oops, that doesn't look right. There we go. Negative x minus 3. And it's totally okay that the inverse of this is the same equation. It's okay. Okay, are there any questions on this one? So before I submit this, I just want to remind you that to get the inverse, the key is to switch your x and the y. Your original graph is called f of x, your original equation, f of x. And then when you see this, these symbols, you can read it as f inverse of x. So this negative 1 is not an exponent. It looks like it. It's in the same spot that an exponent would be. But when you see it in this context, you would read it as f inverse of x. So this is f of x. This is f inverse of x. Okay, and to get the inverse, you gotta switch your x and y. Let's do one more example of this. Okay, so f of x is equal to negative 5/3 x minus 5. Remember, our first step is to replace the f of x with a y so that we can have a y in our equation. You want a y in your equation so that you can switch your x and y. Okay, so I'm going to rewrite this up here where I have space. Okay, so I just rewrote it, nothing happened. Okay, so now that we replaced f of x with y, our key goal is to switch x and y. I know I keep saying that, but I really want to pound that into your brain that you just want to switch x and y because that is the key to getting an inverse. So if we want the inverse of f of x, then you're going to switch your x and the y. And so how do we do that? Instead of y equals, it's now x equals. Instead of negative 5/3 x, it's negative 5/3 y. So literally, I just switched the x and the y. Now that I've switched the x and the y, we want to get it in slope intercept form. So I want y equals mx plus b, which means I want y by itself. So let's get y by itself. I'm going to add 5, get x plus 5 is equal to negative 5/3 y. Remember that every time you get a fraction, so the negative 5/3, this is a division problem. So you can get rid of the division problem, you can get rid of the fraction by multiplying, because opposite of dividing is multiplying. So this is negative 5 divided by 3. I'm going to multiply by 3. Multiply by 3. And so I get 3 parentheses x plus 5 equals negative 5y. The 3's cancel out. So then we just are left with the negative 5y. Let's distribute this 3 into everything inside the parentheses. We get 3x plus 15 equals negative 5y. I'm going to rewrite that up here where I have more space. Okay. From here, we want y by itself. So y is being multiplied to negative 5. I'm just going to divide by negative 5. Okay, so that way those can cancel out. We get y by itself. Hooray! And then now we just need to divide everything by -5. So 3x divided by -5 will give us -3/5x. It just turns into a fraction. Leave it as a fraction, okay? Fractions are good for slope intercept form. Remember, slopes are supposed to be fractions, so it's good. And then we have the 15 divided by -5, which becomes -3. So 15 divided by -5 gave us -3. And the 3x divided by -5 gave us -3/5x. So then in total, this is our final answer in the slope intercept form. I'm going to type it in now. We have -3/5 x, x there, minus 3. And so once again, to recap, this is f of x. We switched x and y to get our f inverse of x. So remember, you don't read this as to the power of -1. No, this is f inverse of x, okay? F inverse. All right, so let's go to the next category.